product of what this video is about today. This is corned beef and rye sandwich made with this fabulous, it's still warm, it's just, you have no idea how amazing this feels, loaf of sourdough rye bread. And the reason I'm doing this prequel to the video is because it's the first time I've done a video and made mistakes on so many levels. I just thought it'd be fun to enumerate those for you up front. One is I'm not an expert baker. I used to bake bread like 20 years ago, but it's only been in the last, seriously, like 10 days that I started with it's not even easy to say, sourdough starter bread. Secondly, we're not expert videographers, so you'll see there's a lighting issue at the front end of this just a little bit. But we fixed it as we went on. And you know, the third is that I just made some flat-out mistakes. Like, for example, at the very beginning, I throw the starter and water in the bowl before I put the flour in. Usually you do that the other way. It gives you a chance to mix together the two different kinds of flour I was using and the salt to get that all mungled up nicely. And then you throw in the water and the starter. But I did it backwards because one of the other things I learned was it's not as easy as it looks to talk and do stuff at the same time. Just a little note to anybody who decides to do an instructional video. If it involves blades and power tools, you might want to practice a few times before you turn the camera on, actually. Hi, and welcome to however many of these we do in the series of Kathy in the Kitchen Cooking Bread series. I don't know how it'll go, but we just have had so much fun making and eating sourdough bread in the last week that with tomorrow being St. Patrick's Day and having not corn on the cob, the other corned beef for dinner, don't laugh, we decided that it would be really good to make some sourdough rye bread to have with the leftovers tomorrow, and I thought we'd share. So I'm going to start with some of the starter that I've been growing for the last 2 weeks. Trust me, it's not complicated. Rick bought me the starter from breadtopia.com for Christmas, and it just comes in a little plastic bag, and I started it up according to these instructions, and now I have this wonderful gloopy starter with little yeasties that I grow more in love with every day. So we're going to take a close-up shot and show you what this looks like. This starter was in my fridge overnight. I took it out, I dumped a bunch out so that I ended up with just about halfway from the bottom of the container to where that black mark is. I don't know if you can see that with my fingers in the way. And then I added a half a cup of flour and a third of a cup of water, stirred it up, and let it rip. And within about 3 hours, this is how much it's grown. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stir it up, and then you'll see there's a wonderful goopiness that happens here. It's kind of bubbly like the stuff or Rocky Horror Picture Show, feed me. But anyway, here we go. So this is this goopy, wonderful starter stuff. And you can see it just kind of gets all shaggy in there. So I'm going to stir it up, and then I'm going to take out a quarter of a cup. Okay, so I've stirred up my goopy starter mess here. I'm just going to dump this, and I'm going to take a quarter cup of my starter and put it in 1.5 cups of lukewarm water. And this is more art than science because, as you can tell, it's very difficult to get like a complete, perfect quarter cup here, but you know, close enough. Okay, so that goes into my lukewarm water. I did wash my hands before we started filming this, by the way. Okay. And Mr. Little House of Horrors or whatever that, oh, that sounded bad. I didn't mean to say that. I meant the other thing. Anyway, I'm going to put this back in the fridge and probably bake with it again tomorrow. Okay, so you just mush the starter around in the lukewarm water and dissolve it. And by the way, the amount of flour and water I use in this is somewhat driven by our altitude. In fact, I actually just use the same quantities that it calls for in the recipe, which is roughly 4 cups of flour to 1.5 cups of water here, plus the starter. But because we're at such a high altitude, we're at 6,100 feet here, the flour doesn't absorb as much liquid as otherwise in other locations. So my dough will probably be a little bit stiffer than yours would be if you're at sea level. But that's okay. It's the wonderful thing about this is that it's incredibly forgiving. So I just go with the directions that they gave on, again, breadtopia.com. Okay, so that's all nice and dissolved in there now. So what I'm going to do is use this super duper scale that Rick bought me for Christmas. And the thing that's so cool about this is that when a recipe calls for a cup of flour, if you just dug a cup of flour out of here and then measured it and then poured it into back into the box and stirred it up and measured out another cup of flour, it would weigh different amounts because it depends on how much is packed in there. So 1 cup of flour is not necessarily 1 cup of flour everywhere else. So what this does is it allows me to be a little bit more accurate because this recipe calls for 16 ounces of flour. And I'm actually, because I'm going to make rye flour today, rye bread today, I'm going to combine rye and just the organic white flour. So the cool thing about this scale is that it will take the weight of the bowl and I can zero out that weight. So now I'm just going to add in 11 ounces. Oops, you know what? I have to change this so that it's not grams. I was cooking something else here. Oh, there we go. Okay, so that's 9, 10, 11. Okay, so there's 11 ounces of white flour. And in theory, I probably should have combined my rye and my wheat flour together before I dumped it in the bowl there, but you know what? This is just such a forgiving recipe. And I'm going to do 5 ounces of the rye flour. I'm just kind of making this up because this recipe is actually, the guy used whole wheat flour, but I think it's going to work out to be about the same thing. Okay, this is 1½ teaspoons of salt, and by the way, I use this salt, sea salt. I just think it adds a richer saltiness, for lack of a better word. I'm going to add that in there. And then I'm going to take what I think is one of the best tools on the planet, which I didn't clean very well last time I used it apparently, but it's called a Danish bread whisk. And it just, it's better than a wooden spoon because it allows the flour and the water to mush up better. And it gives you a really good sturdy handle. And this is called a no-knead recipe. So basically what you do is just schmungle all of your, oh, I forgot something, schmungle all of your ingredients together without getting it all stuck on a wooden spoon. But what I'm going to do is put in some caraway seed because I think caraway makes rye bread taste really good. Now this is a bit of a mystery to me. We have 2 different kinds of caraway seeds in our drawer. One is called fancy caraway seed and the other one's just plain old caraway seed. And for the love of Pete, there's no difference. I can't tell. But because it's St. Patrick's Day and we're going, all out, I'm going to use the fancy caraway seed. And most caraway recipes that call for caraway call for about a tablespoon. So my palm is about 2 teaspoons. So I'm just going to add a little bit more there. You can tell this is a really high-tech engagement here. Okay. So what's going to happen is this dough, it's pretty sticky, as you can see. You just kind of have to really work it. And once once everything's moving away from the bowl, and you can just kind of peel everything off the whisk there, you want to do a little bit of kneading by hand, and this is still really dang sticky. So I'm going to add a little bit more flour, because you just should be able to gently knead it in the bowl. The cool thing about this no-knead bread is the stickier and wetter the dough is, the bigger and more lovely the holes are that you're going to get. And you have a softer crumb combined with the beautiful crunchy crust you can get. It's just a thing of beauty. The problem with leaving it really sticky is that it's just a bear to work with. So I tend to want a little bit of a stiffer dough so that when I go to transfer it from the proofing bowl over into the hot clay cooking pot that I'm going to cook it in, it doesn't give me grief. Okay, so that's all there was to it. We now have a dough that's just going to sit there and think about itself. I'm actually making it a little bit earlier than I normally would, because the longer you let it rise, or you just sit and proof the first proofing, the more flavorful it is. And I want a really good rye bread. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to cover it with plastic, and I'm going to set it out in the back porch. It's about 50 degrees out right now, and that will really slow things down. You can put it in your fridge. And then before we go to bed tonight, I'll take it out of the fridge or off the front porch. I'll just leave it at room temperature for 10 to 12 hours, and we'll come back tomorrow morning and see what it looks like.